The Threshold of Deming, a near-death ride and the man with no tracks. They call the stretch of US 180 between Silver City and Deming the Trail of the Mountain Spirits. I decided to cross those 50 miles of high desert on a bicycle. It was a gauntlet that almost took my life. The heat was a physical weight, the trip a siege against my lungs. 20 miles out from Silver City, my body began to struggle. I was forced to get off and walk, then ride, then walk again. I had to make a choice, my gear or my life. I ditched my backpack, clothes, supplies, just to lighten the load enough to keep moving. I was a man stripped down to nothing but survival and prayer. Somewhere in that emptiness, I heard it. A deep, guttural growl that didn't come from a coyote or a stray dog. It vibrated through the air, a warning from something hidden in the brush. I didn't see it, but I felt the predatory intent. I didn't want to be caught on that highway after dark. I pushed my body into a red zone I didn't know I had. At one point I had to stop and just sit down on the side of the road to rest and gather my strength, before carrying on. By the time I made it to the outskirts of Deming, New Mexico, I literally thought I was going to have a heart attack. My body had been so stressed through those 50 miles. Rolling into the outskirts of Deming by the skin of my teeth, just as twilight began to swallow the horizon, I was grateful to be off the highway as night fell. I found a spot to camp near a truck stop, so I pitched my tent and quickly climbed inside, elated to be able to finally rest. I was exhausted. A friend of mine had arranged a road trip to come pick me up from out of state. I had a couple of days to wait for my friend to arrive and I found me another secluded area to pitch my tent. It was among a few small trees and gave me more privacy from the highway. The next morning, I had an unexpected visitor, someone who just seemed to appear out of nowhere. Suddenly, from behind a small bush, a spot where no one could have been hiding, he appeared. He didn't walk up the road. He didn't approach from the distance. He just was there. He looked like a wanderer, dressed like a man who had seen better days, but the vibe was all wrong. He was too calm, and the story he was about to tell would make me question who he really was. He looked at me and said, "Hi, how you doing?" I was startled. He just seemed to appear out of nowhere from behind a bush nearby my tent. I told him I didn't know he was behind the bush he had just materialized from. I can't really remember how the conversation went, but I said something like, "How are you doing?" He smiled, a dry, knowing look, and said, "Oh, I just walked from Silver City over here to Deming." I was amazed. I guess I could say that I was dumbfounded. In my mind I questioned, how could he have walked from Silver City all the way over here to Deming? I had nearly died on a bicycle covering that 50-mile stretch. I knew the grit, the heat, and the sheer impossibility of just walking that distance across the desert floor. And who in their right mind even does these kinds of things? When I decided to ride a bike that distance, it was a sheer unrestrained thought that I later greatly regretted. People don't ride bikes 50 miles from one town to another. Neither do they walk from town to town. I said, "You walked all the way from Silver City over here to Deming?" And he said yes, with a strange smile on his face. He laughed it off, like it was a stroll through a park. He seemed to put off bad vibes. I think I really didn't want his company anymore. My mind gate slammed shut. I felt the urge to end the conversation, and eventually, he turned and walked away. I watched him go, and then, I looked down. The ground was soft, fine New Mexico sand. My own footprints were deep and clear. But where this man had just walked, there was no footprints. No heel strike, no toe drag. The sand was undisturbed, as if he had been walking an inch above the physical ground. After my encounter with this man, this being, I couldn't help but believe that he was not of this natural world. I made it out of Deming, but I left more than just the sand of the New Mexican desert. I left with the knowledge that on the long stretches of the Southwest, you aren't always the only one on the road.